Greetings and welcome, Champlain College Wave Riders. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I am here with the amazing Dr. Val Esposito, Professor of Applied Sustainability and Environmental Studies and Policy. I am so thrilled to have you here, Val.
Hi, thanks for having me, Kim. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So, of course, Val and I share this topic. We both could probably talk about mindfulness for quite a while and not have one bored second. Specifically, though, Val is going to sort of enlighten us about how mindfulness can actually, alter the brain. And so, and we're talking about specifically here with college students because you do some things that you're going to share with us. So, how about maybe, Val, let us know sort of what you've been doing with it.
Sure. So I originally kind of got interested in mindfulness and meditation as a coping mechanisms for my students because, as you know, often studying the environment and kind of the heavy nature of environmental issues can be hard for emerging adults, as we call them, to kind of really grasp their, get a grasp and wrap their head around kind of the profundity of the issues. And so I wanted to find a way that they could find hope as well as be able to find kind of strength to continue in this work.
No, I like that a lot. And I know that, you and I have had a lot of conversations, and here in general, that with across the country, and I'm sure world, that this generation of emerging adults, I like that, by the way. I've always said young adults, but emerging, it's like a little pizzazzy. I like it. That this is the most, anxious and depressed generation of young emerging adults we've ever had. And so we've got that going on anyway. Then there was a pandemic, and now you're bringing in all the environmental stuff that can be overwhelming. And the hope is that when they learn to practice this, that they'll benefit how?
Yeah, so there's been lots of research that really demonstrates that mindfulness and meditation is a key part of mindfulness. And we think of meditation as an active training of the mind to increase awareness and be present in the moment. And then mindfulness can also be when you're not meditating, right? Just being present in the moment, being aware. And so we can use these techniques, and research has really demonstrated that it can change your brain in good ways.
All right, so how about we just break, because you know how much I love talking about the brain, right?
Right.
Like cognitive psychology, and
Yep.
I could talk about neurons all day long, Val, and
Sure.
I'd have one bored second. So how about, let's break this down into, just to simplify for folks listening, cognitive, emotional, and physical. It'll probably make it easier for you too. So cognitively speaking, what are some potential benefits to practicing mindfulness?
Well, I think one of the really cool ones is that meditation has been shown to thicken the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that manages higher order functioning, which leads to increased awareness, concentration, and decision making. And through meditation, these higher order functions become stronger while lower order brain activities are decreased. So one cool study shows that when students received either a brief meditation training or rest and then listened to a class lecture and then had their retention of that lecture assessed, it demonstrated that meditation improves students' retention of the information and interest in the subject matter.
Isn't that good news for all of us,
Right?
Because I was just having a chat with our colleague Warren about the something different, but it feeds into what you're talking about, Val, is because when the working memory is all clogged up with anxiety and depressive thinking and just overwhelm in general, not much is going in, which means we're all wasting our time with it as far as getting anything in. And so I think you're doing such a huge service with our students, but because by emptying that out and clearing that out, you're making what you're teaching them to kind of create that space so new information can come in,
Right.
which I think is fantastic. Okay, how about emotionally? How does that work?
Well, I think kind of like if you look at it holistically, another cool study, and there's been, I think more and more schools and colleges are trying to really think about how we can establish good habits for students, right when they're coming in to college. And so there's been some studies that have looked at kind of the first year experience. And not surprisingly, mindfulness and meditation was very effective in that. And it promoted students' health, well-being, development of better study habits, and it overall increased retention and had students experience a really good sense of belonging. And
That's also good. Yeah.
them wanting to feel invested in the community and wanting to stay.
That's awesome. Maybe we can just help you and I together can break this down for folks that might not be aware so much, because I like what you just said. All of it was good, but the feeling of belonging, because that is such a huge challenge. I know I have a lot of first years in my classes too, and it's across the boards. I think for college students, there's something about that, just getting here and trying to, and the pressure and stress of trying to find your spot and your people and all that. So what do you think? How do you think mindfulness, specifically with that feeling of sort of security and belonging and fitting in, how do you think that sort of feeds into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially in kind of some of these first year programs, it was a community of folks that were getting together to practice meditation. So I think, feeling part of this community and feeling part of this like-minded, group of people who are interested in some of those same things really kind of helped with that, as well as we were talking about kind of just like more research has shown that it helps develop these positive adaptive social and emotional skills necessary for stress management. And so when you're not as stressed, you're able to feel, you're able to pursue other activities that would also help you feel more connected to community.
No, I like that a lot. And I think you said it earlier, Val, too, because we sometimes hear mindfulness meditation, but really, at least in my world, they're not the same. There might be some overlap there, but for me, mindfulness is like meditation on the go. Because it's about being present, which works for my fast mind. Yeah. So, skiing in the trees or running or walking or whatever, right? But there's the part with the belonging and the anxiety going down. Do you think that possibly is largely about the actual mindfulness being about just being, like in the moment, right?
Exactly. And that's what some studies call the monkey mind, which I'm sure, as you were just talking about. And even when you're not actively meditating helps keep you present in the moment. And so even when you're not actively meditating, it shows that over time it just helps reduce that monkey mind. And that's when the mind is just wandering from thought to thought, which is associated with being less happy, more ruminating, more of that depression, thinking about the past, anxiety, thinking about the future. And so if we can eliminate the monkey mind, that really helps with anxiety and stress as well.
Nice. I'm wondering if in a way it would be an analogy with running, because I think this might give folks hope if they haven't actually worked at being present that much. But kind of like with running, if you run 5 days and miss day 6, cumulatively, you're still in better shape. Right. So absolutely. Is it like that?
Yes. Well, yeah, that's another one for folks who are not as emerging adults, but just adults.
Seasoned adults.
Seasoned adults.
We're not old, we're seasoned.
One that I definitely like is that long-term benefits help preserve the aging brain. Meditation helps preserve the aging brain. So long-term meditators, 20 years or more, but that's the exciting thing. If you start cultivating this when you're an emerging adult, in your 40s, right. You have more gray matter volume throughout the brain than non-meditators, which
that's how we're going to sell it to the emerging. Right? Let's get working on the gray matter right now.
Exactly.
Right? I love it.
So that's a cool one too, for sure.
Well, the aging brain, Val, I love that. Another colleague, I'm thinking of Barbara, another colleague of ours works on a lot of cognitive reserve stuff, and I'm wondering, how that works with being present in the moment as much as possible. How that staves off some cognitive decline and things like that.
Right. That's a great question.
with maybe by keeping the working memory cleared out, that that it has long-term benefits in that way as far as memory retention. What do you think?
Yes, I could see that. And maybe linking it to another, I think this is a fascinating one, that it like a long-term study in students, college students, particularly males in both the U.S. and China, found that mindfulness leads to decreased physical aggression, hostility, and anger as well. So I think maybe some of those, if we're reducing some of those physiological reactions in our body, that can also help increase our brain functioning,
huge,
our gray
because
matter.
it works together. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
No, I like that a lot, Val, because when you're talking about the less aggression, like that's all the severe end, but really that's all coming out of being reactive, right?
Yep.
Versus
Exactly.
responsive.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
React is like knee jerk,
Mm-hmm.
like somebody gives you some snark and you're like right back at you.
Yeah.
Versus maybe they're having a bad day.
Yep.
I don't need to I don't need to react. I can respond tomorrow, right? And so I would think there'd be a natural feed to the bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also definitely research has shown that you're able to, like you're saying, to instead of react, to respond to situations.
Right.
Whereas you have, we always talk about, in meditation, just observing yourself with curious compassion and not judgment, which obviously helps a lot for our self-esteem, as well as it, allows you to kind of take a pause for a moment and not take some things personally, as well as, like, again, react with compassion over reaction.
You just nailed my two favorite things about mindfulness. The first one was because I'm on the go, always, unless I'm asleep. And the other one is that non-judgment thing, because to me, see if you agree with this, because the other forms of actual meditation, that's all good, right? It's like movie choices. Like if it works for you, great. I personally like that it's not about creating a thought vacuum.
Right.
And so if here comes an anxious thought and I'm in the middle of a class or in the middle of a boring date or whatever, I just say to myself, I guess I'm nervous today.
Right.
I'm not judging myself, right?
Yep.
So how do you think, I'm thinking big picture here, if a student, one of our students, all of our students, whatever, are learning to practice being less judgmental of the self, this is mindfulness thing, it's one more thing I'm going to screw up, and it's not like that, right?
Right.
It's just breathe, right? Apparently I'm nervous. I'm wondering if they're learning to be less judgmental of themselves, how do you think that might carry over into their relationships in their lives, or even just randos?
Right. Well, I think, research has shown that it really does increase compassion and empathy as well. So, yes, I think you can take a step back and say, again, as your aggression is being reduced, maybe that person is just having a bad day. I'm observing that person's behavior. It doesn't mean it defines who they are, right? And
that's awesome.
And that's for ourselves too. I'm observing I am having negative thoughts right now, but that doesn't mean
I love that.
I'm a negative person in my entire life. Right?
I love that, because you're like unidentifying with it, because I love that. That's spot on, because that is teaching our students to separate the person from the problem.
Right,
which is gigantic, and if you can bring that in the living room,
right?
Because we judge ourselves harshly sometimes, right? So, you know what? Maybe so and so had a bad breakup, now this, and I haven't eaten, and then is it? Doesn't give me a pass that I just snapped at somebody, but can't I understand where it came from? Right? I love that, because that makes us, like you said, more empathetic to others and also ourselves. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Now, what about physically? What do you think it does?
Well, there is. I think this is kind of physically related, but other research really shows that meditation can help with overcoming addiction as well.
Huge.
Which is kind of both, right? Physical and cognitive. It can help reduce cravings and is more effective in preventing relapses, like for smoking they've seen, as well as for lots of other types of drugs. Like, again, it allows you to sit with the feeling for a moment, but not necessarily act on it.
Feeling where the cravings coming from.
Where the cravings.
It's interesting you say that, and I have to humbly admit that I cannot remember the source. It was probably like 10 years ago, but I read somewhere that mindfulness, I don't say mindfulness kind of came over to the States, because obviously being mindful, dinosaurs were mindful. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
So it's not like anybody owns that.
Yeah.
But it came over here, as far as is being incorporated into cognitive behavioral therapy and being practiced.
Yep.
And what I remember reading this, it was a solid, nice article that I don't have the name for anymore, but that it originally started with dealing with addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Like now it's become
Yep.
like ubiquitous with all their things in elementary schools, but it
Yep.
started out with calming down the addicted mind, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a colleague that works along that space, particularly with schizophrenics and dealing with addiction. And incorporating mindfulness has been a huge
How's that
part.
working?
Good. I mean, they have really developed, like you were saying, I think this is around 10 years ago, they really developed this program that is very highly effective for.
That sounds great. I mean, because whenever we can, and in no way am I medication shaming anybody at all. I'm
Right.
just saying when we can incorporate
Mm-hmm.
an organic strategy with or without
Right.
something to help it out, I think it can only go to a good place because it gives us agency, right? Like
Right.
if it's a skill set
Exactly.
I learned,
Mm-hmm.
I can now do it on my own.
Right.
Which is a great
Exactly.
thing, which brings me
Mm-hmm.
next to, because Dr. Esposito has been doing pretty amazing things here at Champlain College with, if I have this right, the seasoned adults, right? Faculty and staff, and also
Right.
students.
Yep.
Well, it's like wine.
Right.
You don't,
You're
you
right.
don't want to say old, you want to say seasoned. It's
Yep.
better. So, is it called Koru? Is that how to say it?
I'm presently becoming certified for mindfulness and meditation through Koru, which is a program that particularly deals with emerging adults or is focused on
Okay.
emerging
Yeah.
adults. But I've also found when I do it with seasoned adults, it's very effective for them as
Okay,
well.
all right.
It's really it's kind of a program that is you do over 4 weeks, and there's an app that goes along with it, and it really
Okay.
teaches you different types of meditation, and really teaches different anchors. Because sometimes if people want to get into meditation, they're like, okay, I'm just going to sit for 10 minutes, and and my mind's haywire, and I don't have any So this really helps to develop different anchors and different skills for you to be able to
I like that.
sustain meditation over time.
The whole sitting's overrated for me. But
Right,
so, like,
right, yeah.
Like I don't know if you know of Tai Chi or not, but it's like movement meditation,
Right,
or movement. So that's why when Val's talking about mindfulness being the on the go thing, I think that probably suits a lot of people who because not everybody relaxes the same way.
Right, right. Exactly.
Some people sitting and watching a movie is relaxing. Not for me.
Right.
And that's one thing I like about it, as we were saying. Okay, so you've been doing, you said 4 weeks, and are you meeting here on campus or? Or how does it work?
I did a 1-credit course that students could take, elective, and that was a 5-week course. But we did we also talked about, it was called self and collective care, so it was also
It's
about
called what?
self and collective care.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
And it was about also, lots of folks that are going into the helping professions experience a lot of burnout, right? Because
my
they don't
God,
feel
yes.
like
Yeah.
you have you're allowed to take care of yourself or your community, right? It just has to be like urgent and go, go, go. So part of that was thinking about how you can take care of people in your profession and in your communities as you do this important work going forward.
God, that's just hashtag self-care is not selfish, right?
Right, exactly.
Because I just, we're going to have to do another one, I think, Val, at some point, because you're kind of leading into with this mindfulness skill set. I'm a big fan of skills. I mean, talent's great too. We don't want to get rid of the Mozarts and the
Right.
Michael Phelpses and all that stuff.
Right.
But when I can, and I'd say this to my students, when I feel like there's something I can learn by reading, emulating, practicing, I feel like that gives me agency. I can learn that
Yep.
and get better at it, and my life will improve. I like the control of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I love students, be them emerging or seasoned adults, have talked about, and I've noticed in my own life, a subtle but powerful difference. It's not
Wow,
like
I like
you go
that.
from like being depressed all of a sudden like, oh my God, I'm the happiest person in the entire world.
No, but it's
but
better.
it really is. Yeah,
You're
yeah,
improving.
subtle
You're
but powerful.
less sad.
Right, exactly,
See,
and
wow,
you feel like you have more coping skills and ability to separate or distance yourself from.
I mean, I love the
the
distancing
depression.
thing.
Yeah.
I love the thing that you did with the separating the person from the problem. It's so huge. And as you know, I practice mindfulness in every single class I teach.
Right. Yeah.
And my students also.
I'm sure your retention rates and their retention of your materials through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, we could measure that. I don't have the time, but just anecdotally or I feel like Sherlock Holmes, like observationally speaking, there might be a little awk on day one with like the
Right.
minute of
Yep.
mindfulness.
Mhm.
By the end,
Mhm.
it's like, let's snap. Oh, come on, we
Yeah,
gotta go now.
yeah.
And they're all zenned out, which is
Yeah, which is
I think
great.
the gift that keeps on giving. And I also like where were you going with that I loved? Oh, I know. With it's unfortunate that there's such a stigma with self-care, like that it's labeled as selfish.
Right.
And sometimes
Yep.
I'll say to them, or you can stay with the selfish word, but call it something like good selfish.
Right. Yep.
Because we can't, I explained to them, we can't give what we don't have.
Right.
The well's
Exactly.
dry, the cup's empty,
Yep.
you got nothing.
Right.
Plus, burned out people are not that much fun to be around.
Right.
you know,
Right. Yeah.
So the fact that you're also, I am too, and we've got a
Mhm.
lot of us, thankfully now it's becoming, more and more and more of us as professors are actively teaching our students how to keep themselves filled up.
Yep.
So I take a cup and actually do this with them. What's in the cup, hopefully overflowing, is for you. What
Mhm.
overflows out of the cup is for everybody else.
Right.
And with what you're doing with mindfulness, Val, is you're teaching them far more than the content. That's important too, but the mindfulness stuff and the skill set of the self-love and acceptance and compassion, all that, to me, is the gift that keeps on giving. That'll be with them forever.
Right. Yep.
And so that
Absolutely.
kind of, yeah, it kind of rolls into educating the whole student, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, now with the seasoned adults, what has been your experience with them?
It seems to have been very helpful and as well.
Good.
Yeah.
So just, I mean, where can it go wrong? So I guess my last thing for it to ask, because I know how important this is the emphasis on breathing, other than for the obvious reason, right? When it's more deliberate breathing, what can you tell us about that as far as its relationship to the mindfulness thing?
Well, in the seasoned adult class, someone had a great quote, which is basically, all we are is breath. And it's so true, right? As long as you have the breath, you're still a human being alive in the world, right? Right? Exactly. So, I think it's this like very simple but super powerful if you can really master it. Anytime you're feeling stress or you're feeling, I don't know, threatened or whatever it is, if you can remember just to go back to your breath. You're like freaking out about this test that's in front of you. You go back to your breath for 5 breaths.
It brings you back into the moment.
It brings you back into the moment
Yeah.
and can change your whole experience.
It's funny you say that, because I often share with my students, and there's no big story, it's not a big strategy, but it works, is when I'm walking into this gorgeous campus that we're sitting in right now, and let's just say it's not even negative, it's not anxiety, let's just say I'm like so excited about this, that, and that. I will pick a stop sign that's maybe 50 feet away. And I really do this. I don't make this stuff up, right?
Right.
I say, okay, if I'm monkey mind day or hour or minute or whatever, I'll say, I'm from here to that sign, which is like 50, 60 feet away, I'm not going to do anything but breathe and stare at that sign.
Right.
And it's amazing 50 feet later,
Yep.
in that short distance, how much my mind is kind of like anchored and calmed down.
Yep.
I mean, then if you're having a day that's super busy, just do it again.
Yeah.
After the
exactly.
stop sign, pick the next one.
Right. Yep.
Or a door.
Walking meditation. That's one of the ones that we do in the class.
Nice. I love that. Well, this just sounds fantastic, and probably a good time for us to sign off with our listeners here. So I want to thank you, Dr. Esposito.
You're welcome.
For your expertise.
Yeah. And if
Awesome.
I could just say one more thing, I mean, the cool thing now is that there's so many apps out there that really can help you with this, and it's funny because not that, we know that reducing screen time also reduces anxiety and depression.
I was going to go there, but I'm like, that'll take
but
us.
if you could, if there are some, I would say there's some exceptions, and an app that helps
Right.
you meditate every day, even in the beginning, I think would be one that's quite useful.
Headspace, I'm thinking of.
Yep,
know that one?
Headspace, yep.
It's interesting. I almost brought that up, this whole social media thing, but I thought we'd go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Because that just, there's no bigger thief of life minutes than
Oh, right.
than
right.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that said, this generation,
It's part of their life.
it's part of their
Yeah.
life. They
So
would-
then meditation can help them even be detached from the emotions that they're feeling when they're looking at other people's perfect lives.
Right.
So-called perfect lives. Perfect in quotes.
make pretend land.
Exactly.
Really, a social comparison and all that stuff.
Exactly.
No, but see, that's the thing, is that when people are, social media shaming, and we know for a fact it leads to anxiety and depression. That's
Right.
not made up.
No.
To research that myself
Right.
4 years ago. However, when they were born, it was already here.
Right. Exactly.
And so I agree there's a gray area. You know, there's a like a literacy thing and a gray, maybe that wasn't the word I wanted, but just there's a way to steer away from the social comparison piece
Right.
and towards a way to practice mindfulness that they can better relate to, I
Right.
guess is
Exactly.
what we're saying, right?
Yep.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm glad we did that. Okay, so let's do the sign off thing again because I think they can edit that out probably. Yeah, and so we'll just do it over. And
Okay.
then they can cut that and then we'll just roll into the app thing. I didn't mean to stop you. I thought you were done.
That's okay.
Do you have any other
No,
points?
no,
Are you
no,
sure?
that's fine.
That was my fault. My bad. Okay, Champlain Wave Riders. We are going to, it's kind of a nice place to sign off. I want to let you know that you can also hear this podcast episode again at Mindcraft, not the video game, but with a D, on YouTube. You can plunk in Minecraft and Kimberly Quinn, it should pop up. And I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to Dr. Esposito for her expertise in the area of mindfulness and how it's altering the brain in our emerging young adult college students. Thank you, Val.
Thank you. This was great.